Hi, today we're going to be talking about Remeron withdrawal. My name is Lyle Murphy, and I am the founder of the Alternative to Med Center. First question is, what is Remeron? Well, Remeron is it's an older antidepressant drug. It really has a lot of the same characteristics of an SNRI, but it's a lot softer on the norepinephrine side of things. Technically, it's called a tetracyclic, but it's very close to the type of drug that will block the reuptake of serotonin and also block the reuptake of norepinephrine. Now, it also has an antihistamine effect. It blocks histamine 1, which means that it is often used in sleep. Which brings us to question number 2. What is Remeron used for? Remeron is one of those drugs like trazodone that they just kind of hand out to people. They generally give it to people to help them sleep, although it's not really it's certainly better than benzodiazepines, but it's sort of a hit and miss whether it helps people sleep because it does have an excitatory effect. There's a general sort of observation we've had that Remeron at the lower doses, like 7.5 milligrams, is generally better in its antihistamine effect. It's like a Benadryl sort of effect, which at that lower dose, it's more geared for helping people sleep. But at the higher doses, like 30 milligrams, it can be quite the stimulant. So it's also used a lot in elderly populations to give somebody something that they can maybe find some sleep with without having to give them an Ambien or something more serious as far as a sedative. Okay, question number 3. What do I need to know about Remeron withdrawal? Well, Remeron withdrawal is not exactly straightforward since it has a histamine effect, it has a norepinephrine effect, it has a serotonergic effect. So when you pull away Remeron from somebody who has been on it for a long time, you have this sort of the sky is falling phenomenon. It's not just serotonin. It's not just norepinephrine. It's not just having a rebound from coming off an antihistamine and having, a problem sleeping. It's sort of all of that mixed together. And if a person does it slow enough here and they're supported by the nutraceuticals, oftentimes they can come straight off of the Remeron. Other times a bridge medication may be warranted. If you can kind of change the sky is falling on 3 dynamics and have it falling on only 1 or 2, if you can support, let's say, the serotonin pathway with the other type of medication like Prozac, it could be easier for the other things to actually withdraw, get cleared out on that, find your baseline, and then bring the Prozac off a lot quicker. Prozac's generally a lot easier to withdraw from than Remeron. I'm not saying that's the approach to use for the majority of people. I'm giving that just as an option for those people who are really particularly stuck and are looking for something a little bit more adventurous in a way to kind of get them still making forward progress coming off of this drug. As I said, generally here we have a lot of success with the nutraceuticals. Which brings me to question number 4. How can I support my Remeron withdrawal naturally? So, I'm going to talk about this in the way that I would talk about an SNRI. So again, when you have the sky falling and you have both a serotonin and a norepinephrine fall, right? Norepinephrine is there to increase your attention, to increase your wakeful state, to have you more engaged, to have you feel energized. It's actually dopamine converts into norepinephrine. So dopamine is like the reward neurochemical. Norepinephrine is like the attention, focus, drive, having oomph in the world. And too much norepinephrine could result in anxiety. So you've got the norepinephrine aspect, and then you've got the serotonin aspect. When somebody goes into a serotonin plunge, they have a hard time inhibiting ruminating thoughts, inhibiting sort of anxiety, like in fight or flight sort of ruminations. And then also they're going to have sleep problems because serotonin matures into melatonin inside of the brain past the blood-brain barrier. So going into all of that all at one time can be somewhat of a challenge. Now, the majority of what we're going to try to support nutraceutically is going to be the serotonin side of things. Because if we support the norepinephrine side of things and the person's serotonin bankrupt, that supporting the norepinephrine is not going to be attention and focus. It's going to represent like anxiety and too much because they don't have the counterbalance of the serotonin. So we're going to build up their serotonergic aspects of their profile using things like tryptophan, using things like 5-HTP, supporting it with magnesium, a little bit of niacin to drive the reaction forward, and then also other inhibitory sort of amino acids like glycine and acetyl, theanine, potentially GABA, to support the inhibitory, to brace them for this type of withdrawal, because the last thing you want somebody going into is a serotonin plunge and not sleeping and having anxiety on top of feeling like there's no reward in life for the norepinephrine. So when they're coming off the norepinephrine aspects, they generally are going to feel flat, lethargic, like there's no reward in the world, dark, morose. It can be very tragic in its own way, but at least they're sleeping, at least they're able to eat, those kind of things. And they get through that part of the withdrawal. Then once they've gotten through that part of the withdrawal, they're generally okay. So we stop it with nutraceuticals. If you're doing it out there in the world and you don't have that much support around it, maybe ask your doctor about bridging with Prozac, only if you're having a really, really hard time with this. And I don't mean a lot of Prozac. I mean like 5 milligrams. But do ask your doctor on these sorts of things and don't just take it from me. I don't have a relationship with you as a patient. And everybody is so ridiculously different that anything I'm saying, there's somebody else out there going, no, that doesn't work for me. Well, I understand that everyone, there's always the person who is going to react completely paradoxically to your standard approach. And you have to modify your approach with skill to meet that other person, because, when you've done this enough, you do know that there's metabolic pathways that function in different ways for different people. And you have like the plan B and plan C for those type of people as well. But you can't suss that out over even a phone conversation. I mean, you really need to have direct patient visit with somebody. And I don't believe that the telemedicine is the best replacement for a real doctor-patient relationship with someone that you trust. Now, how do you find someone you trust in this arena? I know it's hard. It's ridiculous, but there are people out there. There is help out there. And if you need help finding someone, you can call us and we'll even help you in that direction. Question number 5. What can I do about my sleep when coming off Remeron? Well, we sort of went into that. The serotonergic boosting elements, like I mentioned, tryptophan, and we have a lot of sort of tinctures and herbal sort of things that can help. But if you read up on sleep hygiene, not reading your phone at night, I mean, if you're doing this at home, you're probably going to find an impact to your sleep. Doing it slowly, doing it methodically, not watching YouTube videos when you're laying awake, and particularly using your bedroom as a sacred space where sleep occurs. Not using your bedroom for where business occurs. Like having an office in your bedroom, having anger interactions, in your bedroom where you're fighting, or like your bed in your bedroom really is where you sleep. And if you can kind of purify that space out a little bit so that you have that sort of sacredness in there, shutting off your EMFs, that sort of stuff can actually just be small little things that can inch you forward on the sleep stuff. Now, if somebody is really poisoned up with neurotoxins, that may be why they can't sleep. And in order to address that, they're probably going to need to do a thorough neurotoxic detoxification. I mean, when I say neurotoxins, I mean things like mercury. Mercury, it more than likely, based on clinical observations, poisons the serotonin pathway. And if that pathway is poisoned by something as toxic as serotonin, the precursors, the tryptophan and all of that is not going to bust through that any more than a ping pong ball would bust through the Berlin Wall. It needs to be depoisoned, unburdened from the person's nervous system if they can find sleep. Those type of people that are neurotoxically poisoned on their sleep, they have sleep problems all of the time. They have anxiety all of the time. Their nervous system feels like they are living on a freeway. That's a good sign that you have neurotoxic poisoning. Another thing that's very common is pesticides. The way pesticides kill a pest is they knock out its nervous system. How they knock out its nervous system is they cause overstimulation to the point of death by keeping acetylcholine channels open so that the insect goes into overstimulation, tetany, and dies. Well, we use acetylcholine as well. So when our acetylcholine channels get stuck wide open, a similar thing happens to us. We get overstimulated to the point where there is nerve damage, neuronal death, and insomnia and, an inability to sleep. The presentation for that is generally more constant. If your presentation is intermittent, there's a whole host of other reasons why that could be. Number 6, side effects of Remeron. Well, its antihistamine effect can produce quite a rebound where people get sleep and then it affects them. They can't get sleep at all. I would think that's the most concerning effect of the histamine part. And antihistamine can also lower histamine to the point where it causes psychosis. There is a notion called low histamine psychosis in the orthomolecular field. And then since it's working on norepinephrine and serotonin, there's a wide range of side effects that this drug can have because it's operating on so many different neurochemical pathways. So it could be anything from aggressiveness to over-lethargy. It really depends on the person and how this drug is being metabolized. So if you're having these side effects and these side effects don't feel right to you, well, they're probably not right. And by and large, when it comes to drugs, the side effects are the effects of the drug. They're not just some random thing that there are those obscure things, but there's also the effect of the drug. When you're changing how your serotonin interfaces in your nervous system and your emotional neurochemistry, or you're changing your norepinephrine and how that controls your body posture and your attentiveness, it's not just like this surgical thing like, oh, I'm going to have my eyes be more working. It's a whole kaleidoscope of change that has ramifications in all sorts of other areas, including your digestive, including your autonomic nervous system, including your parasympathetic and how your sexual function works, and all sorts of things. So we have found that people don't know that there's other options. I mean, when somebody's having sleep problems or they're having problems with depression, what's their thyroid doing? What's happening with their vitamin D levels? Are they able to synthesize melatonin? There's all sorts of other reasons why a person can be symptomatic besides a Remeron deficiency. So I encourage people to investigate those things at a minimum with some naturopath or some integrative doctor. Or if you want a total reboot and you want us to figure it out, we're more than happy to be of service to you. Feel free to call the number you see associated with this page and share this with your friends. Like it if you do, and subscribe to our channel if you want to see more. Thank you very much, and I really appreciate your time. Have a great evening or day.